This is a Dragon Blazer production.
This is Unsolved Comedy.
Hello, guys, and welcome back to Unsolved Comedies. As always, I am your host, Keizaya, and we have...
a bloody man at Bojangles.
Bojangles guy over here, guys!
Stephen.
It's Steven. So, if you guys caught the last episode, we recorded for a super long time unintentionally, and we're now cutting the episode in half. Yay! So, when we left off, we had just gotten done talking about Regina Meeks and the parents reporting their children missing. And now, we're going to start talking about Terry Hobbs. So, after I've told you everything that I've told you about Terry Hobbs, I know that they haven't listened to it, but what do you think about Terry Hobbs? Just real quick.
He seems like a douchebag.
I love how you said that. I don't know.
But let's let the listeners.
Oh yeah, you guys need to decide for us.
Opinion. And
this episode will also put into for you Jason Baldwin, Jesse Miss Kelly, and Damian Eccles. And those are the West Memphis 3 that we're talking about when we talk about the West Memphis 3 case, because they were, I think, wrongfully convicted. So you'll get some background into them, and we'll let you guys get right into it. So now let's talk about Terry Hobbs. This motherfucker. Okay. Terry Hobbs.
This sounds like a very unbiased view.
Listen, I have reason to believe that Terry Hobbs murdered those 3 boys, and reason to believe that Terry Hobbs, literally, there's, I remember reading this. I don't remember where I read it at. I think it was maybe in the West of Memphis movie, which is another movie that was made about the case. It was either in West of Memphis or Paradise Lost. But in West of Memphis or Paradise Lost, it's mentioned that when the cops interviewed some of the family members of Stevie Branch, they said that he was really scared of Terry. Really scared of Terry. He's 8 years old, 8 years old get really excited playing, and sometimes they have accidents. Well, Stevie would have accidents, and then he would go hide in a closet. And his grandmother remembers this. And his grandma was like, why are you hiding in the closet? Let's get you cleaned up, Nothing to be ashamed of. It happens to everybody type of thing, trying to be supportive. And he was like, Papa Terry's gonna beat me for this. It was bad. And, I can't even remember all of it, but, I remember that sticking out to me, I didn't have a lot of accidents when I was a child, but I remember, family members of mine having them when they were, between the ages of 6 and 8. And it wasn't really something that they got spanked over. They might get put in timeout after they got cleaned up and, put in the shower and put in clean clothes, and then they would get put in timeout. Hey, you need to pay more attention. You're 8 years old, you need to pay more attention. When you have to go potty type of deal.
I mean, everybody disciplines differently, and
I know that my parents and the people that I was around that had children, they never spanked for that kind of thing because they're kids. Adults piss themselves on a regular. I've literally seen adults piss themselves at grocery stores before.
Literally witnessed this often?
I've not often, but I literally, I remember, I was 14 and I saw this chick, just pissing herself outside of a Walmart, and I was like, okay.
Walmart is not the best place to be judging who pisses themselves.
Good point. And not to mention, I work in retail, guys, and my best friend literally found jeans soaked in piss before, pants that somebody tried on and had an accident while they were
Well, maybe
wearing
if they
these
would have got
pants.
their ass smacked as a child.
No, I'm just saying.
Wouldn't have done
It's
that.
not. It's not really something that I've like, and I've never met anybody that spanks for that kind of thing. Like, or let alone that the kid's like so scared that he goes and hides in a closet and he's like, Papa Terry's gonna beat me for this. I'm gonna get a spanking for this. He's gonna beat me for this. Like, that it was scary enough for him to go hide in a closet.
I mean, spanking is.
I think spanking is good.
Kids aren't a fan of being spanked, so
I think spanking can be good if it's used the right way. Like, I was always raised, you get 3 chances, and if you break those 3 chances, then you get spanked. But this isn't a 3 chances type of situation. The kid had an accident.
Yeah, but not everybody does that situation. I mean,
Okay, you have 3 kids, 2 of which you're completely potty trained. Did you ever spank either of your 2 children for having accidents? Is that ever something that you did?
No, I didn't, but I'm not that
It's
type
just
of
not,
parent.
It's not something common, is what I'm saying. And like the way that the family spoke about Terry Hobbs was that Stevie was very afraid of him. Like, Terry called Stevie frog legs. I don't have any proof of this. This came from Stephanie's video. But he called Stevie frog legs. Like, who calls their stepson frog legs? Like, that's not a very endearing
I don't
term.
really understand the nickname. I'm sure there was a reason he called him that.
I don't know. To me, like...
Maybe he jumped around a lot.
I don't know. I don't know.
He was, jump around. Nope, maybe. I just checking.
Okay. Like I said, I don't know. I get off vibes from Terry Hobbs, and like I said, I have reason to believe that he murdered these boys, so I'm not very...
this is the first time I've heard this story in this case. So.
This is information that we'll probably get in the next episode, and the next episode will have the court case and the aftermath. You guys are getting 2 episodes this week. You guys are hella spoiled. How do y'all feel? But Terry Hobbs was never questioned. He was never looked at. He was never asked for DNA, and he was never asked for an alibi. The other 2 fathers were. And Terry Hobbs, who is the only stepfather, like, he's literally a stepfather. He's not like Chris Byers' father, who literally raised him from a baby. Like, he knew his dad, and he would go around his dad. That's why he called Terry Papa Terry, because he already had a dad type situation.
I mean, I was a stepfather. Why you got to be like that?
No, I'm just saying he was a bad stepfather. That's what I'm saying, is that he was a bad stepfather. There's a reason I call John Mark Byers Chris's father, and then make the distinction that Terry Hobbs was Stevie's stepfather.
See, I feel
because
like...
they behaved extremely differently. Terry didn't raise Stevie like he was his own. He treated Stevie like shit. Like, according to Pam, he would get really jealous. Like, he honestly reminds me of whoever the fuck that guy was that killed Patrice. That guy.
Allegedly.
I'm sorry. Allegedly killed Patrice.
You just really have a problem with bad parenting.
I do.
You were a bad parent. I automatically assume you murdered this person.
Well, here's the thing. He would get jealous because Pam would, like, if Stevie got scared in the middle of the night, Pam would go lay with him and, like, or she would lay in bed with him or let him snuggle her or whatever. Typical things for a little boy to do. Like, my cousin was, like, 16 to 18 and was still, like, laying up on his mom. I was like, fucking mama's boy, and he was like, yeah, what the fuck ever. Like,
that's more common than you think.
I know
Not
it is.
saying it's right, but yeah.
I don't believe in being jealous of a child, because the attention that the child is getting and the attention that you want are 2 completely different types of attention.
Just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean it's not.
I just think it's wrong. I think it's wrong.
You can think it's wrong. That's fine. Think it's wrong. And
we're not going to start this argument, guys, because if we do, we'll argue for the next an hour and a half.
I'm not saying it's not wrong, but I'm saying it's common.
It's common, but it's wrong.
It's not exactly something that doesn't happen.
Whenever there's a missing persons case or a murder, and I hear that, it's a red flag. Like, I'm sorry, but it's a red flag. Anyway, Terry Hobbs says that he looks for Stevie after dropping Pam off at work, and his alibi is for his only alibi is a man named David Jacoby, who I'll just call Jacoby from now on because it's easier.
Then David?
Terry and Jacoby worked together. Terry was like an ice cream repairman. I really don't know what the deal was. He went to work very early in the morning and came home early in the afternoon. So Terry drops Pam off at work.
First shift.
Yeah. Well, Terry drops Pam off at work and goes to Jacoby's house. And from what I understand, I heard this from Stephanie, and I heard this also in Terry's interview, that he finally gave to the police after he tried to sue the singer of the Dixie Chicks for defamation of character.
What?
What? Yeah, we'll talk about that later too. It's all bad. It's all bad. It's all bad.
He was the Earl in Goodbye Earl. Is now my prediction. Earl's gotta die.
Maybe. So he goes to Jacoby's house, and apparently he takes Amanda with him. And according to Terry, I did watch, like I said, I watched Stephanie's video, and she gives David Jacoby's statement as well, and they're different. So I'm going to tell you both of them, and then you tell me who you think is lying. So David Jacoby's statement is that between 5 and 6, Terry shows up with Amanda, and they play guitar for like an hour. Like, they play guitar for a while. Terry's trying to learn this new song, and it was a deal. They played guitar for like an hour. And I don't know about you, but like, if my stepson's missing, I'm not going to play guitar with somebody for an hour. I'm going to be freaking out.
Did he know that his stepson was missing at this time?
At this point, Stevie should have been home at 4:30 to be home so that Pam could go to work. And according to Terry, he has not seen Stevie at this point. So, if it were me, I'd be freaking out. I'd be freaking out because my son hasn't been home. He was told...
What time was this?
This was... he says between 5 and 6. I'm going to say more towards 6 because he did have to drop Pam off at work first.
So, and the kids were supposed to be back by 4:30. I mean, kids are late.
Kids are late.
Kids
but
are little shits.
At this point, like, let's...
Sometimes.
So let's say that, yeah, you're right, he's late. But Terry shows up, like, John Mark Byers had a very, and this is where I say that I see a distinction. John Mark Byers and Dana Moore were ready to report their kids missing as soon as they realized that their kids weren't just late. Because they had a time that they were supposed to come home.
Yeah, but...
So within an hour of the kids not being home at that time, like, Pam was freaking out. Pam, before she went to work, was freaking out that Stevie wasn't home and that he couldn't be found because apparently he was good about being home on time. Do I think that Stevie was murdered before Pam went to work? No, I think Stevie was... Let's not talk about theories yet. I'm not going to tell you what I think. It's suspicious. That's all. Little sus.
I'm just saying. I'm just pointing out just a little bit there that
you're just playing devil's advocate, and I get it.
It's not. Well, yeah, I guess I am, but when it comes to that, kids are late, and some people freak out right away. But some people realize that sometimes kids are doing shit.
This is towards 6 o'clock. And he also lied to police. We'll talk about that, too. I'm going to give you Jacoby's statement first.
Well, I'm going in blind. I don't know what all he's done later.
I know. So he plays guitar with David for about an hour and doesn't mention Stevie at all until David Jacoby says, "Hey, where's Stevie? Normally when you come over like this, Stevie's with you. Where's Stevie?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, my son's been missing since like 4:30. Maybe I should go out and look for him." That's what he says. Maybe I should go out and look for him. So he leaves Amanda with David Jacoby, and he goes out and drives around, or he goes home to check if Stevie's there, and he's not there. So he comes back, and he's like, Stevie's not at home. Can you come out and, like, drive around with me or walk around with me to look for Stevie? And Jacoby's like, yeah, sure, of course. Like, why wouldn't I? So he goes out, and they drive around, I think, for, like, it was a really short time. It was between 15 and 45 minutes. It was not long. They drive around for this short period of time, and then Terry's like, hey, I'm going to go home and change. You go, and I'll drop you off at home, and you go change, and then we'll search the woods, right? According to David Jacoby, he took Amanda with him when he left that night to go change, and he never came back. Never came back. Jacoby ended up going out to the woods to look for Stevie himself because he was concerned. Terry's story is that... Now, let me just make sure I have Jacoby's statement right. Yes, okay. Jacoby says that he was never in the woods with Terry Hobbs that night. Ever. He did go look by himself, but to his knowledge, he said, unless Terry Hobbs went to the woods without me and was looking for the boys, and we were in the woods at the same time, and I didn't know about it, he was like, I can't corroborate his alibi because I wasn't with him, is what he was basically saying. This guy's lying to you. Because Terry Hobbs told the cops that as soon as he dropped Pam off at work, he went over to David Jacoby's and told them immediately that Stevie was missing, and asked that Jacoby's wife watch Amanda while they go out and drive around and look for Stevie, right? And that he was never by himself that night. He was always with Amanda or Jacoby the whole night long. And that's his story. He says that he went back to the house to get changed with Amanda and then brought Amanda back to Jacoby's house to have her babysat by Jacoby's wife, and then him and Jacoby went out to the woods together. And Jacoby says that never happened. So if you had to take one of those stories as the truth, whose story are you taking as the truth?
I mean, I know who you think I should be picking, but I mean, I don't know much about these guys other than what you've told me. But
well, and keep in mind that this alibi isn't given until like years later. Like, this happened in 93, and this alibi wasn't given until like the 2000s, when the cops finally realized that they had never really questioned Terry and he could really be a suspect. So this alibi was given like at a crazy weird time, and Jacoby was like, I don't know what this guy told you, but it's bullshit. This is what happened.
It's weird that they didn't really question him right off the bat, because everybody goes after the fathers or the...
They questioned the other two fathers, and in fact, John Mark Byers was the focus of the second Paradise Lost movie, and I think like half of the first Paradise Lost movie, as the guy who actually did it. And then at some point, John Mark Byers like looked into the information on Terry Hobbs and talked to Pam Hobbs some more, and like actually spoke to Damien. Like, I don't know if he went to go see him in jail or if he called him or wrote letters to him. I really don't know. But at some point he spoke to Damien and decided that, and Damien apologized for accusing him. He was like, we did the same thing to you that they did to us, and it was wrong, and they apologized. And Chris Byers' father, John Mark Byers, to this day believes that Damien is innocent, and that Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miss Kelly are innocent, and that Terry Hobbs killed his son.
Which one was Damien?
Damien, we'll talk a little bit more about Damien, but Damien is the one that ended up on death row.
Yeah, I know. Who is he to these kids?
Nobody. Fucking nobody.
Well, you're talking about a guy that you haven't explained yet. He's
one of the convicted, one of the 3 wrongfully convicted men. Like I said, he's nothing to these boys. Like, I can't even explain it to you. Like, it's so weird. That's why I said I'm doing it in 2 separate parts. We're talking about the boys, and then we're going to talk about the wrongfully convicted people.
Well, I know, but you're saying names and not explaining who these names are.
I'm saying these names so that when I mention Damien and explain who Damien is and explain who James and Jesse are, I want you to start connecting the dots when I'm talking about them later. So I'm just putting these ideas in your head, that's all.
I'm just saying that nobody knows who these people are if they don't know anything about
If people
this
are watching
case.
a West Memphis 3 podcast, most likely they know about the case.
No, I like every time I listen to a podcast.
The reason I say this, and let me just straight tell you, the reason I say that is because this case is fucking high profile as shit. And I'm not just saying that. And I understand that you've never heard of it. I get it. But this case also happened when you were 10 years old, right?
And
my
you weren't
mom,
born.
No, I wasn't born. But my mom was. My mom was... If my mom had me when she was 22 in 1999, 6 years before that, my mom would have been...
16,
17, yeah. And she said that she remembers the case vividly. I called her when I was doing research for this case, and because she doesn't watch or listen to our podcast, but she's always wondering what our next case is. And she was like, hey, what's your case for this week? And I was like, it's the West Memphis 3 case. And she was like, that case is total fucking bullshit. And I was like, you know about this case? And she was like, fuck yeah, I know about this case. They did the same thing to those boys that they had been doing. And I'm going to put some race in here a little bit. Sorry. But my mom's a black woman. And she said they did the same thing to those 3 boys. Because they were boys at the time. The youngest one was 16 and the oldest one was 18. She was like, they did the same thing to those 3 boys that they've been doing to black men for years.
No,
So it's a high profile case. That's all I'm saying. I get
that it's a high profile case, but if we're going to do a story on our podcast to something that
I get what you're
have
saying.
to assume
I get
that
what you're
no one's
saying.
listened to it.
I get
or
what
knows
you're
this.
saying, but the reason that I'm doing this the way that I'm doing this is so that you and the people at home can connect the dots when they hear the name later. When I say, now we're going to talk about Damien Eccles, they're like, Damien, I heard that name earlier. Let's listen to what this guy is and what has happened to this man. And then we can connect it to what I heard about him earlier. That's the way I like to listen to podcasts. I don't know if you guys like to listen to podcasts that way, but that's the way I like to listen to podcasts, is to have little bits and pieces that I can connect on my own later. It makes me feel like a little investigator, and I'm like, it's fun. I like it.
All right.
If you guys don't like it, feel free to tell me on our Instagram page.
I just was assuming it was one of the kids' dads or something, and I didn't know.
I gave you all the names of the kids' dads.
Yeah, I didn't remember. That's why I asked you who Damien was.
No. So, there's lots of people searching at this time. I never finished Terry Hobbs' statement, did I? Terry Hobbs... Oh, yeah, I did finish his statement. He claims to be with either his young daughter, Amanda, who later on, Amanda accuses him of sexual abuse.
Oh. This story
just
got so
great,
much
right?
better.
So, this guy, bad guy. Terry Hobbs, bad guy. Hate him.
Heard.
Hate him. Like, literally. And, we'll talk more about it a little bit later, but this guy literally sued the lead singer of the Dixie Chicks because she supported the West Memphis 3. And when people talk about the West Memphis 3, they're talking about the wrongfully convicted boys. So she was in support of the West Memphis 3. And she said, I think that Terry Hobbs did it because he was never formally interviewed and we don't have any proof that he didn't do it, right? She said something like that. And Terry Hobbs sued her. He was like, I'm going to sue the singer of the Dixie Chicks. And he sued her. And then lost the case and had to pay her fucking lawyer fees. Can you imagine how expensive the singer of the Dixie Chicks lawyer fees are?
Yeah.
I bet you that had to hurt. That had to sting.
I mean, if you're claiming to be innocent, I would be pretty upset if someone was accusing me of murdering these 3 8-year-old boys. Allegedly.
So there's lots of people searching in Robin Hood Hills, but there is no police presence. And I mentioned this before. Bad police work. The police dropped the fucking ball on this one. Everybody wants to blame the West Memphis 3, the wrongfully convicted boys. What about the police? The police that did a horrible fucking job at their job. Literally, and here in Ohio, which is where we're at right now, in Ohio, if a kid goes missing, there's search and rescue, police presence at the search and rescue, and then on top of that, they issue an Amber Alert and an APB right away if they have a car. None of those things happened. And this was in the 90s, and I believe, if I'm not wrong, sometime in the 80s, there was a law passed that called the Johnny Gosh law or something like that, where you didn't have to wait 24 hours to report your child missing. So they should have jumped on this like it was a real missing child, but they didn't. They dropped the ball. They're assholes. Bad cops. And like I said, I don't know. I'll give cops credit where credit's due, and I will give cops credit later on in this story, but I feel like the cops on this initial first day could have done more. Like Regina Meeks. Fucking Regina Meeks. Done. So there's no police presence except for a couple of cops that John Mark Byers was out looking in the woods with all these people, right? And he never saw Terry Hobbs either, so it's not like Terry Hobbs was just out looking in the woods by himself. There was a whole presence of people, right? And John Mark Byers says he never saw Terry Hobbs. So John Mark Byers is out looking for his son. And the only cops that are there are a couple of cops that asked John Mark Byers what he was doing. And he was like, I'm looking for my son. And these two other boys, they're 8 years old, they're missing. And the cop was like, wow, really? Let me go grab a flashlight and help you, bud. Bad cops. I also forgot to mention that Terry Hobbs didn't report Stevie missing until... Let me see if I can find it. Actually, it doesn't have a time. He picked Pam up from work and went into the restaurant that she worked at to use the payphone to make his statement over the phone. Regina Meeks didn't come to the house that night. The statement was taken over the phone. And then some cops came to talk to Pam the next day. Or after the boys were found, some cops came to talk to Pam. I really don't know exactly what happened. But Terry waited a long time to report his stepson missing. So at some point, around midnight, everybody's like, listen, we're not finding anything. We're not finding the boys. We're not finding any evidence that they were even in these woods. Let's go home, regroup. Everybody can get some rest. I mean, I'm sure the parents aren't going to be resting that night. But the people that are helping with the search and rescue are probably like, let's go home, get some rest, and then we'll come back out tomorrow, right? At daylight, when we can see. Because all of this searching is going on in the middle of the night with no light except for flashlights and the moon to help them see.
8-year-olds missing.
Yeah, literally.
Missing. I'm
well,
sorry.
I mean, to be completely fair, I get where they're coming from. At this point...
You have third shift, go do their job.
Exactly. First of all, cops. But... these people that are just townspeople helping with the search and rescue, I get where they're coming from. They can't see anything. They've got one fucking cop and probably a handful of flashlights, and they're just walking around in the dark, yelling these boys' name, one after the other, over and over and over again. They're probably frustrated. They're probably discouraged. They're like, let's just go home. Let's regroup. We'll come back out tomorrow, right? We'll come back out tomorrow. And they do. Everybody goes home, gets some rest, right? The next morning, Gary Gitchell, who we'll talk a little bit more about later, asshole, fucking asshole, he heads the case. He is in charge of the case, head detective, I think. And that's when the large search starts with actually police this time. Also, early that morning, literally daybreak, Chris Byers' father, John Mark Byers, gets a knock on the door. He jumps out of his chair. He said he couldn't sleep that night. He literally just sat in a chair staring at the door.
Don't blame him.
Waiting for his son. And so at 5 or 6 a.m., he gets a knock on his door, and he jumps out of the chair, runs over, and rushes to open the door. because he thinks it's Chris. And it's Terry and Stevie's grandfather that we already talked about. I think his name was Jackie Hicks. He came from where he lived to help search for Stevie. And Todd Moore. They're all there. They're like, hey, let's go look for our kids. And they actually, I think they get stopped. Like, I don't think the parents were actually allowed to help look this time because the police presence was there. And so they took the family out of the equation so that if, God forbid, they did find these boys dead, which is exactly what happened, the family wouldn't have to see that, you know? So I think they took the family out of the equation. I could be wrong about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think that's what happened. So, the boys, the first thing that sparks interest is a guy named Steve Jones. He sees a black laceless tennis shoe floating in the creek. Let me see. I really want to see if I can find a picture of Robin Hood Hills to show you. So that I can show you, like, what this creek looks like. Because it's super shallow. So here's a picture of the creek. This is, I think, actually very similar to what the creek looked like when the bodies and the bikes were found.
That's a pipe bridge?
That's the pipe bridge that the boys would have crossed. So that's the kind of creek we're talking about. Little baby creek. And kids are known to swim in that creek as well. So not anymore, like, I don't remember what his name is, but the guy that I got all that information about the Belvedere Hotel in the first episode, that same guy actually went to the Robin Hood Hills, and when you look at it now, it's like overgrown. It's not the same place. It's not. Like, you can't even see the creek anymore. Bad. So the boys, they see the shoe, and then somebody's like, shit, we gotta go in that water, don't we? You know, obviously we see the shoe floating. We gotta go in that water. The water is about 3 feet deep at the time. And the guy has to get on his hands and knees and crawl through the water. And he said that he felt something when he was crawling. And he grabbed it and he pulled it up. And I think that Michael Moore was the first one found. So it was Michael Moore. And he picks him up and he puts him on the side of the creek. And the boys are anchored to the bottom of the creek with sticks, and they're tied up. And all three of them are naked. The next one to be found was Stevie. And Stevie and Chris were very close together. So I think they were pulled out maybe at the same time. And they were tied up. Like I said, they were naked, but they were tied up. And lots of people say that they were hog-tied, but they weren't hog-tied because typically when you're hog-tied, it's like diagonal. So this hand, your right hand is tied to your left foot and vice versa. But they were actually tied, like their right hand, they were tied like, I don't even know how to describe it. They looked like rocking horses. Their hands, their right hand was tied to their right ankle, and their left hand was tied to their left ankle, and they were tied behind their back. So they were, like, pushed out like that.
Jeez.
So, boys are found, and I feel horrible for the man for the cop who did his job and did a good job and went into this river and pulled 3 dead boys' bodies out. Like, I can't imagine. Like, I would just be completely emotionally destroyed at that point. Like, I'd quit. I'd quit my job.
I quit the force.
Sorry, guys. 3 dead boys was enough for me.
That's
I'm
it.
done.
I'm done.
So let's talk about what the boys looked like when they're pulled out of the water. Michael Moore looks severely beaten, as does Stevie Branch looks severely beaten. They have cuts all over them, which were later discovered to be animal bites, and we'll talk about that more in the case. Like, they were claw marks from the body, from animals, like snapping turtles, pulling the bodies closer to them so they could feed off of them. And then Chris Byers also looks beaten, but he's also been castrated.
What?
That's why I said
Oh, jeez.
Chris Byers was found the worst. This poor little boy, and it is said in the case, like I said, we'll talk about the court hearing later, but a snapping turtle ate his, but it was a snapping turtle. He wasn't castrated with a knife. It was a snapping turtle that
it just
ate that part of him. I hate to say it like that, but he wasn't actually castrated. Like when you say castrated,
so when he was murdered, he didn't.
No, they didn't take his.
I mean, not that this is much better, but at least he wasn't.
He wasn't castrated when he was murdered. The same way that Stevie and Michael have cuts on their bodies from animals pulling the bodies closer to them, Chris Byers, unfortunately, happened to fall victim to a snapping turtle or another carnivorous animal that just happened to eat that part of him, because he had the same marks, the cuts and everything on his body as well. So what we assume is, we assume that they're beaten, because animals don't beat dead bodies. We assume that they were beaten pre-mortem, and then we assume that animals were feeding on the bodies post-mortem.
Gotcha. Still not great.
Pam Hobbs has a gut-wrenching reaction. Like, I remember when I was watching the Paradise Lost movie, like I said, it's been a while since I've watched it, but when you watch it, like, I don't know, like, there were lots of press and things there, and they record her. Like, she fell to the ground, and it almost looked like she was having a seizure, and she was just screaming and screaming and screaming. And I can only imagine that that's because, like, her heart was ripped out. Her son was found dead in a creek in the woods, naked, tied up. You know, I just imagine that, like, that was the only sound that her body could produce at that time. And it was horrible. Like, literally, like, just the scream made me cry when I was watching the Paradise Lost episodes. Like, I cried when I saw the dead bodies, and then I kind of composed myself because they were showing you, like, the bikes that were found on either side of the pipe bridge. You know, they weren't talking about the death anymore. And then, like, you see Pam Hobbs' reaction. Like, she falls to the ground. Like, Terry Hobbs has to grab her so that she doesn't hit the ground hard. And then she, like, starts shaking and screaming, and it's awful.
Hey, this is Stefan from Unsolved Comedies. So, if you have any theories on the case that we just discussed, please mention it in the comment section. And also like and subscribe my page, Dragon Blazer Productions. It's right there. Right there. Just, click on that. Subscribe. There's a little thumbs up. Like it. Thank you very much.